Welcome back to Real Training Camp, the Miami Heat. Hurlburt Field, near Fort Walton Beach, Florida, an Air Force base, where the Heat, going through their final paces in training camp and their night practice, they'll practice Saturday and then make their way down to Miami and prepare for their preseason. Mike, we've been watching a little bit of the scrimmage here. What do you see in them run here?
They're trying to get out and push the ball in transition, take advantage of their speed and quickness, take advantage of their defense overplaying, getting in passing lanes. But I see a little bit early on here of kind of a hybrid offense. I see a little bit of the Los Angeles Lakers triangle. Also, I see a little bit of the split series that Sacramento likes to run. Part of that Pete Carrill, Rick Adelman now runs it down in Houston, which I think the idea here is to get some movement because you don't want people standing around and you have players that are used to pounding the ball and doing a lot of dribbling. So how do we get some movement out of them? That's my early look.
So strong. LeBron James, we see him do that over and over again. Mike, we talked about him being perhaps the most unique physical specimen to ever play in the NBA. And when he goes to the hole like that, it's impossible because you know what? He says, you'll hit me, but I will hit you as well. So take your chances, buddy.
Well, he punishes the defenders that come over to either block a shot or take a charge. Right now, the score, the white team, led by LeBron James, is up 16-5 in this scrimmage. Remember, this is the half that was supposed to be even, where they broke the teams down and felt that it would be a very even score at the end of these first 20 minutes. But getting back to LeBron, Vince, he's 6'8", 260 pounds. The power forward, Udonis Haslem, is 6'8", 230, maybe 235 pounds. So LeBron has 25 pounds on him.
Well, LeBron's white team is in the lead here, and all week long, Mike, we've been hearing that when they go through the defensive paces and the coaches are charting stops, LeBron's team, no matter the other four, has consistently been the team that has won and not had to do extra conditioning at the end. So LeBron making other people better defensively as well.
It's one of the reasons why coaches during practice will rotate your groups. And when I say groups, you set up in practice groups of 3, groups of 4, teams of 5 for the various drills or competitions that take place against each other. You look to see which groups win because eventually you see the common thread that runs between all the winning teams. Who's that guy that just happens to be on each of those teams that win all the drills? And when you reward the winning team, whatever it might be, no running at the end of practice while the other guys have to run, it's very important to these guys.
Well, there's LeBron. LeBron has had the ball in his hands several times, bringing it up the floor. He has run the offense for this white team.
You know that during the course of the season, whether it's Wade with the ball in his hands or LeBron with the ball in their hands, they feel very comfortable. Remember, LeBron was 2.5-to-1 ratio in assist turnovers last year. Just an outstanding ratio here. The unselfishness, pass the ball, find open people, and that was a great example of playing angles right now. Throw it to the corner to throw a baseline pass.
How important is it for players who aren't regular starters, who may have limited minutes, to show well in practice every day? Is that your game if you're a player who has limited minutes or maybe you're deeper on the bench? What's that atmosphere and that dynamic like in practice?
Well, remember, some teams come to training camp with 20 players, and they're trying to be in the top 15 because 12 players are named each night on the active roster. The other 3 players are kind of like on injured reserve. Now, the next night, you might take one of those injured reserve players and put them as one of the active 12 players. Some teams don't want 15 players. They just want 14 on the roster or 13 on the roster if they feel it always leaves them with a spot to be able to go get somebody. How about that follow-up right there by LeBron James on the offensive boards? So here in Miami, what you're trying to do is you want to be one of those 15 that wear a Heat uniform this year. So show well in practice.
Well, that's your time. That's your time to grab some of the spotlight. Let's take a look at LeBron once again in action.
Well, first of all, LeBron takes the penetration behind the back to an open teammate and then right back on the rim. He's out of bounds, yet he's back up on the rim following it up.
He has been all business, as we said, in training camp here. And LeBron, with a serious chip on his shoulder. And really, Mike, he's had his share of criticism maybe a little bit in his career in terms of giving up the ball late, not taking the shot necessarily all the time. He's never had to really deal with this type of criticism that he has gotten from all corners in terms of making the decision to come play for the Heat. So I imagine that's fueled him in training camp and will fuel him this year? Hopefully we'll get a chance to ask him that.
We'll find that out as the year goes on. It's early right now. It is the first time that I'm sure he's felt these kinds of personal attacks against him. I don't care who it is. When it's about you, it hurts. All of us. When you read something in the paper that's a negative about you, it hurts. So now it's what do you do with that? How do you channel that hurt? What direction do you take it in? And we'll see now over the course of the year how LeBron handles all that.
Well, of course, all that decision, and certainly you see stuff like real training camp, it's gotten the attention of other teams around the league, and in particular, a certain team also in the Sunshine State, Mike, the Orlando Magic, and several coaches and front office people and players have been very vocal about a lot of the attention the Heat has gotten here as we head to the season.
Well, Orlando, I think, feels slighted because they've had, back-to-back terrific seasons. Had a chance to win a championship 2 seasons back, eliminated earlier last year than they expected. But when you look at what took place and what did they add to their roster, well, they added Quentin Richardson. They added Duhan, who was with the Knicks a year ago, to try and they lost Matt Barnes, so they had to try and make up, for where Barnes left. And they're hoping Richardson will give them that same toughness that Barnes gave him at the defensive end. He also can shoot threes. But they have to feel a little bit slighted, like, nobody's even mentioning us anymore. All we did is win 59 games, a year ago, and we're not even being mentioned now.
Well, Richardson had a great quote. It was bleep the Heat, with all due respect. As we see a bomb off glass from you-know-who. Where will it go?
How about Dwayne Wade putting on a little bit of a show here for the folks in the stands? Military people are loving it.
I think it's terrific that you can be here at the Adderhold Complex and be up close with this team. And it's a nice gesture for the Heat to reach out, not only to their fans in the Fort Walton Beach area, but certainly the folks here. Let's take another look.
Yeah, wow. Wade knows he was getting fouled, so he figures, let me just get it up there anyhow, because then I'll get to shoot 2 free throws if it doesn't go in. Instead, he winds up kicking it in with that left hand. That makes the score right now. White's up 24-11.
24-11. Now, are the guys really keeping score here? Will they hear about it later tonight after the scrimmage, or do they let it go? A little good-natured jostling with each other?
They'll talk a little junk when they get in the locker room there. And they're talking a little bit now out on the floor to each other, and it'll heat up. And, remember, this was supposed to be even or fairly close at the end of the first 20-minute segment, and right now it's not looking that way.
No. Dwayne Wade's been through a lot. He said the last 4 years have not been pretty. Now it's changed a little bit here. How will he benefit in terms of just having the presence of another superstar like LeBron James to take that burden off him? He said, you know what? Hey, LeBron, take the attention. Do the interviews. That's fine with me.
Well, Dwayne is such a great competitor, and he understands that people in his position that are the franchise have to show up on nights when you're injured, nights when you're not feeling well, nights when all the bumps and bruises seem to surface at the same time, and yet you still must perform at a very, very high level. Just to make the playoffs is a difficult thing to do, let alone try and get past the first round. And we see there that the disappointment of losing in the first round the last couple seasons. 3 years back, they did not make the playoffs. And Dwayne Wade doesn't like that feeling. He remembers the championship season and liked that feeling, finishing up on the last day, winning an NBA championship. That's what he wanted to get back to.
Well, let's not forget, too, he has his ring, he has his finals MVP, and he cemented his place to a certain extent. Of course, the story's still being written for Wade. But now, LeBron, did he defer to another superstar? Do you buy into that, what we've heard about, well, you had to go to someone else to get your championship? Or is this just the nature of professional basketball or sports as we know it now? Is that unfounded criticism?
I'm not sure that I agree with people who are making the statements that, he left to go join somebody else's team. Look, there have been a number of star players, Hall of Famers, who did not wind up with their original team later on in a quest to win a championship. Some of them were traded, not their choice. Others through free agency, or others walked in and asked to be traded to another team. So what's the difference? Charles Barkley started out with Philadelphia, but Charles wound up playing in Phoenix and Houston and trying to win a championship. Charles is a Hall of Famer, a terrific player. So what are you saying Charles abandoned his guys to go try and win it with someone else? Charles was pretty darn good for those other two teams, Phoenix and Houston.
Yeah, well, I guess what I'm saying is, when is this statute of limitations run out on that LeBron thing, making the decision. It's over. He gave it 7 years in Cleveland, and you're looking at a guy who was born in Northeast Ohio, right, in Cleveland. So I sort of get it. I don't like the way it was handled. I think even LeBron would admit it was mishandled in terms of how the information came out, but he did give it a run, and it's kind of over now.
I was always amazed with LeBron, and I go back to his days at St. Vincent St. Mary's. I got to see him as a high school player, how well he always handled himself. The two biggest mistakes, if you want to call them mistakes, that people felt he had made, he wore a Yankees baseball hat to an Indians game one night.
Well, that is a big mistake.
And he was down on the Dallas Cowboys sideline before a Cleveland Browns game. I mean, my God, for a 22, 23, 24-year-old who has the pressure on him the way he does, to handle everything so well, and those are the two mistakes that you're going to point out. Now, this decision that took place, it was his right to leave Cleveland for whatever his reasons were. Some people are driven by money. Some people are driven by the opportunity to win championships. That's what free agency created. So if you want to do away with free agency, then you'll do away with the ability of players to go where they want to go and play, or play together with other people. There was nothing wrong with that. As you mentioned, it could have been handled differently. It could have let the Cleveland people off easier. The impact may not have been as great. There may have been a better understanding on their part why he did what he did. And I think if he had to do it over again, and I don't know if he would say, yeah, I would change a couple things, but that and a couple ensuing statements after that have appeared in different articles or interviews are what have the people fired up.
Well, that's certainly the case. And I think you know that Cleveland is an area that's provincial. The history of sports goes back generations in terms of following their teams. But at the same time, business is business, and we move on. Talked about Orlando. What about the team that Miami will open up against when they start their season? And that's Boston.
Boston Celtics have added a few pieces over there. They have the two O'Neals, Jermaine O'Neal and Shaquille O'Neal, that they've added to that team to give them a presence on the inside while they wait for their starting center, Perkins, to come back from that very serious knee surgery. Right now, the Celtics, to me, I think the Celtics are as good a team as Miami is. I think their experience maybe makes them a little bit better early on until Miami has a chance to blend together. But my concern with the Celtics would be, will they be whole and healthy, as we see Mike Miller tee one up and miss it from downtown behind the three-point line? Will the Celtics be whole and healthy at the end of the year? With all those aging bodies out there, can they last and stay healthy, remain healthy over an 82-game season?
I don't know. Those veterans are pretty crafty. They know how to get themselves through that grind. Let's go back to Mike Miller there, who just missed that three-point shot. And you talked about him a little bit as we started our real training camp. How big an X factor is Miller? Because I know you even like him in some clutch situations. You think he may get a chance to pull the trigger, yes?
Well, I happen to be a big fan of Mike Miller. I love Mike Miller. He can play 4 different positions on the floor for you. In Memphis, when we lost both of our point guards to injury, I had Mike Miller bring the ball down the floor. He knows everybody's spot on the floor, where they're supposed to be for every play, knows all the defensive rotations. The guy, as we mentioned, shot 48% from the three-point line 2 seasons ago, over 50% from the floor. He's got great range on his shot. He's got a handle. He's a terrific rebounder from either the small forward or big guard position. So Mike Miller, to me, was a great pickup. He stretches the defense, puts pressure on him, and he can handle and pass just as well.
Well, they could have used that three, the red team, as the white team is up 30-17 as we speak here at the Adderholt Complex. We are at Hurlburt Field near Fort Walton Beach, and this is Miami Heat training camp. It's been an interesting week for the Heat, getting to know one another and really pushing it pretty hard. And you know, one of the Heat players, I won't mention him, I bumped into him in the locker room there. He said, they don't like us out there too much, do they? And I said, well, I don't know about that. Opinions vary. But I told him, I said, I'd rather be respected in many ways than liked. So you have to respect them. Whether you like them or not, that's a different story.
Well, think about the Detroit Bad Boys team, back with Lambeer and Isaiah Thomas and that whole group. And when they went around the country, that's basically what they carried for an entire season. And they had to go through the season, enduring that, the pressure that was on them to win games, the fact that people didn't like them because of their style of play, and yet they had enough focus, concentration under the great late coach Chuck Daly to win those championships.
Absolutely true. More real training camp with the Miami Heat. Vince Giannini alongside Mike Fratello taking you through on this Friday night on the Florida Panhandle. LeBron, he looks like he's in mid-season form. We'll be right back.